So is your idea of romantic relationships really healthy? It might not be. And that's because we've been fed unhealthy relationship patterns throughout rom-coms and movies and so many other sources. So in this video, I want to show you which behaviors that are usually considered as romantic are actually huge red flags and which are actually the opposite. So what are the green flags that you should be looking out for? Before we get into the core of this video, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Alex. I am on my own journey to strengthen my self-confidence and completely release from people-pleasing, something that I've been working on for over the past years. And I'm also a yoga teacher, both on the philosophy and the movement sides. And this is one of the major tools that helps me on this path, and particularly releasing people-pleasing and all of these tendencies. On this channel, I share everything about women empowerment, building strong self-confidence, and all the tools that help me on my own journey to do that. So I'll share things that are quite practical, easy to use, both going into the mindset, but also going into really deep work that is required to address some of the mechanisms that we have that's kind of deeply lodged into us. So a lot of what I talk about is actually very rooted in yoga philosophy, but it's also tested by me. So it's things that I actually applied and that helped me overcome some of my biggest issue around those topics. And if this is something that sounds like it would interest you, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting on my videos. I love when you comment and when you share your own experiences. It really creates a sense of community on this channel, which is what I really want to do. And in case you are a returning viewer, I just want to thank you for checking all my videos and liking my content. Thank you for being here. So let's start with our topic today. First of all, where do we even get the idea of what a romantic relationship should be? So you must probably have experienced butterfly in the stomach, the anxious wait for the text to come in. Will they write? Will they not write? When will they do? How do I respond to this? Asking other people what you should answer to a certain text. The excitement of the beginning, right? But what is important to understand here is that some of these things are actually okay. But some of them are actually major red flags if you analyze the relationship patterns and what it actually represents to feel those things during the early stages of a relationship. Important to understand is that some of the feelings you might feel in these early stages are actually your nervous system telling you there's something wrong. But we actually think that this is normal. So let's look into why actually we think these are normal things. Over our lives, we build an idea by collecting various information around us, what a relationship should look like. And so we'll look into each of these sources and see what are the limitations of these sources and why we shouldn't necessarily trust them. One of the first sources is our parents' relationship. Our parents are our first living example of what a romantic relationship should be. Sometimes, of course, it doesn't apply because your parents are split up. This was the case of my relationship with my parents. In general, whatever you see very close from you, whether it's parents or close caretakers, these are unconsciously the models that you will integrate as kind of the baseline for what you think a romantic relationship should be like. Whether it's a long-term relationship or if that relationship broke down or it had some toxic traits in there, it doesn't matter. What matters is that this is what you saw as the baseline, and even then, if there were toxic issues there in that relationship, this is what you integrated as what it at the end should be like. So you don't see in those cases, for instance, a healthy relationship as something trustworthy because for you, you think that a toxic relationship is always what it boils down to. Of course, we can see why there's limitations because we're humans. And especially in the previous generations, particularly in the previous generations, the further we go back, there was less awareness about where the relationship was uneven, unhealthy. There was less self-awareness, and the weight of society was even bigger than right now. So a lot of these patterns that were developed over the past generations in the relationship were not actually very healthy relationship, and they were easily passed on every time, because imagine with every generation the model of the previous one subsists in certain amount unless a person decides to take action, self-analyze, and understand what their patterns are and start addressing them. But most of the times people don't do that, because unless they confront it with a major life situation, they don't decide to actually do anything about it. They think that's what normal is. So, as you can see, our parents' example already is quite limited to the least. Of course, some cases will be different. There always are quite good examples, but always remember nobody is perfect. There's no perfect example. Even if the example of your parents was really good, even in that case, there might be things that might not apply to you because you are a different person, and for you, a relationship might not look the same way. Let's look at other sources where we can find our models. Of course, there is movies and rom-coms. These are our cultural surroundings, something that we're exposed to very early on. In these cases, a lot of the symptom or the sign for romantic relationships are actually quite unhealthy signs, so that you shouldn't be looking for. But these were normalized and shown as being what somebody needs to be looking out for in a relationship. There's also classic literature, storytellings that also depict very dramatic relationships. Usually, what happens is the more drama there is, the more sales there will be, because people want to see their situation be reflected in these sources, and so they're looking for them, and this kind of supports and perpetrates the amount of drama-based relationship that we see around us, especially in classic literature and things like that. And then, of course, there's also storytelling you see around you, like advertisements and all of these less visible, less remarkable sources, but also that create an image in you, particularly when you don't notice it. Ads, in this case, are very powerful because this is something you don't even notice that you're looking at. Because usually, if it's on TV, if it's on your YouTube channel, for instance, you'll see some ads passing, but you don't really look at them. But still, even though the conscious part of your brain doesn't register these things, the subconscious always registers it. And that's very important to understand. There's so much information that goes straight into our subconscious without even passing by our conscious brain. So super important also these various less visible sources which kind of integrate into our brain without us noticing. And then of course there's stories around you, friends' stories. Again, these are not really reliable sources as to what a good relationship should be, because none of these people are, rarely good examples or examples we should be looking up to into healthy relationships, because most of the time they are exposed to the same things, they have similar relationship with their parents, stories. So there's nothing, like in a broad sense, there rarely is like outstanding example that we could access in our close surroundings. So basically, if I told you none of these sources actually represent a healthy relationship, wow, shocker. One of the major reasons that the storytelling that we're faced with in movies and literature, in various other sources, why it's also not depicting a proper or healthy image of what love is because it confuses love with passion. So passion in itself is not a bad thing. Like there's never a good and bad, generally things. Everything has a place and a reason to be. However, what it does, it's imagine that you're taking water, a transparent water bottle filled with a little bit of dust in the bottom, and you shake it strongly so it becomes completely opaque, so you can't see through. So your vision is blurred, so you can't see the signs that will tell you, all right, this is a good sign for this person to be quite a positive influence, self-aware person or not. So the passion will blur your vision. And depending to your sensitivity to passion, to how much you are able to keep your kind of vision through passion, depending on that, that passion could actually lead you to go for a relationship that's not healthy for you. So it's not in itself that passion is a negative thing. It just has this blurring effect, which you can't see the reality through. Passion actually creates dopamine in the system. So this dopamine, which is a hormone of excitement and also an addictive hormone, this is the hormone that social media uses, that any addictive substance uses as well. So essentially, every time that you go into a passion state, you're generating that addiction of your system to it. So why are books and literature and movies using passion instead of love? Well, to create that same dopamine rush in people that are viewing it or that are consuming it so that they come back to it, right? So to keep them hooked essentially. And because of that, the whole system is skewed towards a passionate state. And through this, again, we don't see the red flags. So if you translate that into reality, what it means, so your average rom-com is basically like a drug. So let's now look at what are the actual red flags that pass as romantic signs of a relationship. So we'll look into all of these generally accepted behaviors that are actually signs that this relationship is not for you. So these are the signs you should be also looking out for the next time you come into a new relationship. So the first one is insistence. Basically, refusing the signs that the person might not be interested. This whole idea that you need to grind to get the girl, to really push and push and push, even though she says no, is very, very unhealthy. Because what does that mean? Because basically it favors the tendency to disrespect the boundaries of the person. The person clearly said they don't want to see that person or they're not interested. And still, the person pushes through, and in the storytelling, they usually tend to get the girl, which is not necessarily what happens in reality. But, working on sensitivities of that person, maybe the fears of not getting someone else, it could work. But the reasons why the person falls into this insistence is not because they really like the other person. It's just because they are pushed into it and they're questioning their own intuition. So that's where it's super, super unhealthy, actually. This insistence trope is extremely, extremely unhealthy. There is a second one, which is connected to the first, which is love bombing. Love bombing is excessive expressions of love, of passion, of kind of, this pouring out of excessive expressions, which is not necessarily relevant at the early stages of a relationship because you don't yet know the other person. And based on the information that you get from the other person at that stage, there's no actual realistic ground to be that into it because you don't know who that person is yet. You don't know what they like. You don't know how much they know themselves. There's all these important things that you need to know about a person. They're not known to you. So why would you be expressing that incredible love at that point? There's no reason. Well, that reason mostly is because of physical attraction, so purely based on visual. So that's clearly an important aspect, but it cannot be the only one. Again, that's where it's a red flag because the person that's love bombing you is basically expressing interest in just a tiny part of you because they just don't yet have access to the other parts that are hidden from them yet. So what they can see is your visual looks, maybe a bit of your energy, but that also, again, It's a question mark, because what is the energy you're giving away? And that's another question that you will need to be asking yourself, and we'll look into this in another video. But what is the energy you're giving away? Is it a secure energy, or is it more something that is needy, or something where you're craving for attention? And if you're exalting the energy where you're craving for attention, they will notice it and they will give you that attention. And that's where the love bombing comes in. So again, it just sets the ground for an unhealthy, unbalanced relationship. And again, the passion of the beginning, all of this you can't see. So these dynamics are hidden from your mind. They are not available to you. So very important to listen to these cues, and also to remember love bombing at an early stage is out of place. Okay, number 3 is this whole thing, I can't live without you, or you complete me. Okay, so that's a huge one. The you complete me sentence is absolute bollocks. You are not a half of a person by your own. Let's set that straight. Nobody is a half person. We're not half people walking around looking for the other half. No, we are an entire personality, fully self-sufficient person that, if they're not, needs to work on that to be, So this is really important to understand. So when a person tells you, you complete me, I can't live without you, there is a neediness in this statement. There is a statement that says you are not enough by yourself. Like, I am not enough by myself, but you also, since you're my other half, are not enough by yourself. And this means that we're not complete, fulfilled humans on our own. And that's very important to break that idea. So again, what this feeds on and why it works is that it appeals to those that feel incomplete, or feel that they need to please people, particularly people pleasers, for instance. They need this external validation to feel valued. That's where you complete me will absolutely go straight to the heart, because it fills that void that you have. But that void is the problem. It's not the fact that they are coming with these words. The problem is the void that you have in the first place. So again, super dangerous statement to be really looked out for. Another one is jealousy and possessiveness. So I have another video on attachment and detachment as well, which I invite you to check out. I will link it at the end of the video. But essentially, jealousy and possessiveness, they are not justifiable by love. Because when a person feels that the other person is their ownership, that already signals an unhealthy, a toxic relationship to that person. Again, it comes back to the number 3, where you complete me. If you think that you are one by being together, this means that you need to keep that other person. It's connected to the previous point. Basically, that other person becomes a part of your ownership, a part of you. And in that case, anything that takes it away is a threat, right? But again, it shows an unhealthy, unbalanced relationship. A real relationship is actually 2 separate individuals, and their relationship becomes like a third additional entity in between them. But it's not them 50% and 50% the other, right? Okay, so that's very important to understand, and jealousy kind of fits into that. The jealousy is the reflection of a lack, of the fact that you need the other person to complete the void, and you feel the other person pulling away, so you feel empty again, and that's why you need to bring that person back. So very important, again, to understand jealousy is not a justifiable behavior. It's actually a toxic behavior. It shows a toxic relationship to you and to the other person. Another one, which is quite often there, is kind of this unpredictability and the absence of safety in the relationship. So basically, you are looking for their validation, and the person's looking to the other person's validation to earn their love. So this is connected to a lot of around childhood traumas again, where we needed to earn the love of our parent, and the same way we want to replicate that by trying to earn the love of our partner, meaning that the love of our partner is not there always, but instead it's only there where we behave well. And that's again a very toxic trait, because that means that love is not a given, and it should be. And particularly if you learn to have this kind of love for yourself, where love is a given, it's always there, whether you screw up or you do a mistake, you're still loving yourself. It doesn't mean that you won't improve yourself or avoid that mistake in the future. That doesn't mean that. But people do mistakes, and that doesn't impact or connect to the amount of love that they get or they receive. So same way here, unpredictable behaviors, push and pull, hot and cold, that type of unpredictable behaviors, basically, although they create this thrill, but the thrill again is a fear. It's your nervous system actually telling you something is wrong. But again, through these images of how a relationship should look like, we think that these are normal things. Another one I see quite a lot in these sources are assumptions and lack of communication. So essentially, we assume based on our prior knowledge, prior experiences, what the person would think or should think. And this justifies a lack of communication or an imaginary version. And a lot of that is happening in shows. Like you think, oh, but they thought that the person would do that, but they didn't. Like, the thing is, we always have a version of the other person in our head, which is a construct. Essentially, it's based off all that we saw. But we can never really know the person as they are right now. Things can change, people evolve constantly. And the most important part to make sure the connection subsists is communication, and constant communication. And this is very, very rarely represented in movies or TV shows. You would never see that. Again, for the thrill, for making it interesting, to avoid it being boring. But again, what is boring? Why we consider a healthy relationship boring? That's a big question. It's again because less dopamine, less thrill of the novelty. So in that case, we go for the easy solution to keep people hooked on the TV, So basically that's it. Another one that's quite important is full sacrifice of life for the other person, the I'll do anything for you kind of thing, where people sacrifice their career, people sacrifice what they love for the other person because love is the most important. This romantic idea that you need to lose everything for the other person. So relationships are very important. This is true. But at the same time, again, remember this idea. These are two separate individuals that create a third entity, which is their relationship. It's not 50-50. It is two separate individuals. And in that case, each individual needs to be fulfilled in their own right. Each person needs to find a way to be aligned with what they really want to do in their lives, to be fulfilled. And if the relationship prevents that, this is gonna backfire down the line because, okay, for a certain amount of time, the dopamine, the novelty of the relationship will keep their spirits up. But once that, bottle of water, the dust settles down, suddenly you see reality again. And suddenly, what happens? You see that you lack a purpose. You don't have a purpose anymore. Who are you even now? You lost all your identity from this relationship. So, this is super important. From the early stages of relationships, never to completely sacrifice whatever you want or love or want to do for yourself for the relationships. Again, coming back to communication, coming back to this healthy way to find compromise where both people manage to continue what they really want to do. And maybe even do it together. It's not the problem. The problem is keeping their fire alive throughout. Another one that I see a lot is this needing to know where the person is at all times. this is unhealthy and shows a toxic trait in the relationship early on. Again, it's shadowed by the passion that might be there and prevents us to see clearly that this is a problem. Because this is connected again to the possessiveness point. It allows people to masquerade strong possessiveness as love, but it's not love. It's again this idea that they own you and they need to know where you are to control your every move. There is a fear because there is a possession. Real love doesn't have possession connected to it. Real love is setting the other person free and letting them choose you every single day by themselves, not because you push them to. It requires this tremendous trust. I know it's hard to hear, but still, this is what we should be seeing in TV, we should be seeing in movies. It's real courage. Ninth thing I see a lot is they don't understand us. It's we against the world. That kind of trope is very frequent. It's kind of the Romeo and Juliet type thing where they are separate from society. They are just themselves against everybody, basically. But a relationship where you're kind of extracting yourself from all your support system, all your circles, friends, family, everybody. Although, okay, somebody might not be super approving of the relationship, which you should examine why, by the way. It's not necessarily wrong. Maybe there's some truth in it. I'm not saying that you should hear and listen to all advices you hear. However, just examine. Again, it's just worth to cross-check. But again, this idea that a couple should be against everybody is a red flag. It's definitely a red flag. All right, so last one that I want to talk about is the overemphasis on charm and the charm of the person, their appearance, their humor, the energy they kind of exert at this moment. And what is important to understand that charm has two main types. There's two reasons why you could find somebody charming. One reason is because they look for it. So it's artificial. It's a kind of a smartly engineered charm from that person to make sure they get the attention that they want. And this is coming from a lack. It's coming from a person that's incomplete and that wants to gather attention through that charm. So it's an instrumentalized charm. It's not a natural charm. If they didn't put it on, they wouldn't be charming at all. They can turn it off. Whereas the other type of charm is completely different. It's a person that's very safe, very secure in their own shoes. They're very grounded. They don't care about the opinions of everybody. They're just themselves. They're just completely unapologetically themselves. And this is very attractive. It's very charming, but they can't turn it off. They're always like that. It's just their basis. It's their natural way of being. They're not thinking of how they would say things. They would not think about their humor. They wouldn't use their looks to get to a certain result. Rather, this is really just a natural state. And that type of charm is effortless. Whereas this other first type of charm is manufactured. And it's there to attract the weak ones or the ones that need attention, the ones that look for love bombing, and all of these points that I mentioned before from this list, it's actually where this fake charm comes into play. So super important to distinguish that. And a lot of the times when in the movies, in the literature, a character is shown to have charm, it's never really made clear whether it is a real charm or if it's a manufactured charm. So something to pay attention to as well. So let's really understand what's the common point between all of these red flags that I just exposed to you. And the common point is all of these red flags encourage self-abandonment. They all favor validation externally rather than internal validation. So the other person is there to confirm your value. And that's where the thrill comes in, because in the first place, you are feeling that you're lacking value. and you feel this other person will tell you that you're valuable. First of all, you need to tell yourself that you are valuable, and then, only then, you are ready to go in a relationship that's healthy, that's full of green flags. So, talking about green flags, what are they actually? So, again, before I go into this list, I want to re-emphasize that passion is not the bad thing. It's to be expected. Some degrees of passion is nice to have, but the point is not to get your attention deflected by it too much and keep on paying attention to the red flags that I mentioned to you before. And similarly, you can also start looking for the green flags that we're going to be looking into now. Another important thing about passion is that imagine this being dopamine that's shaking up that bottle of water, making it very difficult to see through. So similarly, there are ways to make sure that your nervous system is more used to extremes. So it will be less affected and it will remain more clear visioned even through these passionate moments. And that's where nervous system work, somatic work, regulation is super useful because it helps you to make sure you keep your sight straight even through the passionate moments. And one of the ways to do that is really to build your self-worth outside of relationships. You could be in one, that does not matter. It's not the point. You don't need to be single to do that. But it's still in moments where you're not with your partner, where you're not with your husband. It's moments where you're on your own and where you are able to create a space just for you and building your self-worth and your relationship, your knowledge of yourself during those moments is really key. All right, so let's look into those green flags. So the first one is respect for what you're saying and respect of your boundaries. So for instance, if you refuse a date, they will not chase you or really push you to still go. They will respect your opinion and they will stop chasing. So it doesn't mean they disappear completely. They're still there, but they just respect what you're saying. And for those of you who have maybe low self-esteem or kind of looking for validation from these external sources, this might feel like they're not into you. But actually what that means is that they're respecting what you're telling them. So be attentive to that, also for yourself, to understand what it is that I am feeling in the situation that shows something about myself, not necessarily only everything about the other person. Relationships are actually a mirror to enter into a better self-knowledge, better self-awareness. Another one is prudence and absence of excessive expressions of interest before they really know you. So this again is important. A person that's secure and safe with themselves, they will take time to get to know you on a deeper level before going all out in expressions of passion. This is because they know that they only see a part of the person. They really want to know you deeply. And that's actually very, very gratifying. It's actually showing that they care about you. They want to understand you really. Again, for a person that feels the need to have the external validation, it might feel like a very slow start. But it actually is a healthier start because a person is actually really interested in who you are, not just the surface. Another key thing that a person that's secure will want to know about you is how much self-awareness you have. Yes, it's something that's super important because basically if they are doing all this work to be self-aware, if you are not, why would they be with you? There is no reason. Because if you're not willing or open to look into yourself, what are your patterns, and spoiler, we all have them. There's not a person that doesn't have them. Everybody does. So if you are not open to do that, the other person has every right to say, look, I know this is a very difficult work. It's something that takes years and years to do. I've done all of these years of work for myself. And you still need to, you're at the very beginning of that path. So they have the choice. Maybe they want to come with you on this journey, but maybe They will look for somebody that's already at a certain degree of self-awareness so that they can match their understanding together. Another key point is they look for a sense of self-worth and a pride in being yourself. There's not this idea of self-sacrifice for the relationship. So this again is showing that they want you to be fully yourself. They want you to be an entire human being, not 50% of a human being. So again, this is a huge green flag. And of course, you need to up your standards of yourself to get there. But still, this is a very, very good sign. Another thing is that they're really open to communication and transparency to make you feel at ease to express yourself. So you know that you are safe to talk to them. They're not gonna judge you or correct you, or they're not gonna be trying to use what you're saying later on. They respect what you're saying. They might not understand everything you're saying every time, but they always, always will respect it. That's key. That's a huge green flag. There's also an absence of excessive possessiveness, jealousy, needing to know where the person is. They kind of let you free because they trust you. They trust themselves, so they trust you because that's their relationship to themselves that they know of, and that's the relationship they give you. So you are free to do your own things. You are free to be completely yourself. However, it shouldn't feel like they don't care about you because they really do. They actually give you this freedom because they care. And that's a huge green flag. Another thing that they're not isolating from their friend circles, their support community when they come with you. They want you to integrate that community, that support system, to also be part of it, to really become an integral part of an integrated community. So this is actually a huge green flag because they don't want to isolate you. They don't want to make the couple be this like island alone. Instead, they want it to be merged in the community. Super good sign for a relationship. And finally, yeah, the attention that goes way beyond the charm. Obviously, you're looking into intelligence, you're looking into all these little things that make you being you, your uniqueness, your deep inner kind of identity. And this is not necessarily your nationality, your ethnical origin, or whatever. It's not all these superficial identities. It's your real kind of your spiritual, your almost soul identity inside. And that's really what they value. And that takes time to uncover. So these are the major green flags in a relationship to look out for. And again, these signs might feel a little bit more calm. They have a different energy. You can feel it. Like first things, like feel the energy of the red flags. You feel the kind of a wake up of the nervous system. Maybe you feel it here, or these butterflies that we talk about. Like this is the kind of activation that you actually don't want. Because what that means is your nervous system turns on and warns you. And instead of taking it as a warning, what you're doing is thinking this is great. Because society has taught us that this is how it should feel like. It's not. It's not how it should feel like. Your nervous system should feel calm. You should have a gentle pulling towards that person. You should feel at ease next to that person. It should feel like home next to them because you're just like basically with your own self with them. And that's the feeling that we want. It's not an activation. It's not a unknowing what to do. Oh my God, what should I do? It's more kind of like yeah, that feels good. Which doesn't mean that relationships aren't work. They are, but still, that's the feeling in the early stages that you should be looking out for. All right, thank you so much for watching this video until the end. I hope you got a few tips and maybe some realization moments during the video. Really happy that you stayed around. Just as I mentioned before, I have a video on the levels of attachment and particularly how to let go of attachment. I will link it here. And if you want more about better self-knowledge, increasing your self-confidence, creating better boundaries, which are key for all of what we discussed today, I have a masterclass that's completely free that you can access in the link under this video. And again, thank you so much for watching until the end and see you in the next.